great friends, doctorates, have been teaching around the world. They have more awards than anybody can dream of, and they will show us today how art and science in relation with architecture can, truly transform the world. So I will leave it at there. Deborah, Anton, welcome to IAAC. Please join me in welcoming Ensamble Studio. Thank you.
In English, Danny, no? Okay. So, thank you very, very much. Happy to be here with you guys. This is the first lecture that I give seated. So,
And after a 30 minute
and after a 30-minute setup, I really, really appreciate that you are still here. So, first, apologize. It's Microsoft Windows problems. So, thank you and sorry for the waiting. We have a short video to compensate the setup that tells a story of our itinerary through what we have named the architecture of the earth. An architecture that has to do with our relationship with the base of the earth, the crust of the earth, and everything that means in architecture. We have provocatively presented all our prototyping and our early works that have to do with mass concrete stone rather than like tectonics, like wood or metals or other structures that we have also practiced. But in all our story, we have been obsessed with this relationship of architecture and the earth, how it relates to the early mining processes and how it ends up giving form the structures that we inhabit.
As Anton was saying, our visits to the quarry or initial explorations today, visiting Valdaura and visiting the school, we have seen a lot of these, a lot of initial explorations, play, trying to understand materials, how they come together, and really the way we discover architecture with very early works in Santiago de Compostela is by really playing and exploring and trying to discover architecture through making.
And the origin of pretty much all material processes is somehow either a mining process that includes certain level of destruction or a harvesting process that includes counting in all that, I would say, process of growth. All these projects that we're going to present were how we discovered the architecture that sources, and it's part of, I would say, a mineral nature. Here we discovered the roughness, no, the brutality and the weight as fundamental actions that sometimes we have to execute over the terrain. And we were learning. I'm going to let Deborah speak about this process of experiencing with recycling the spare parts of a quarry and transforming all these matter that was going to be either crushed or piled into the quarry into an artistic event, a structure, a wall that was going to hold all the meaning, all the expression, and the architecture of the building that was posteriorly going to be erected in Santiago.
For this project and for other projects that we've done, really understanding the origin of material, the industrial processes has been really important to trigger the creativity process. In this case, when we visited all the quarries, we discovered materials, in this case, spare parts we could work with and try to convince people around us to make some unconventional solutions. Also in Galicia, this is the project of the truffle that we heard today is well known here because of the scale that is very similar to many of the pavilions that you work with. This is a cabanon and also a very experimental project. In this case, the idea was how to build a small work of architecture that would almost belong to nature. So we wanted to build with the local materials around us, earth, hay bales from our neighbor, vegetation around the stone, and concrete to consolidate all the mix and create a solid structure. In the end, this is like a fabricated rock, fabricated stone.
And this project was seminal for us because here we approached a path where we learned from additive manufacturing process. We always say that this was the first 3D printed project that we knew of. We just were the robotic arm, as you will see in some images. But behind all this, I would say, technological process of how to cast a continuous amorphous magmatic boulder of concrete, we started also a cultural project, a cultural adventure. We were willing to break certain rules of architecture, including the ones that define beauty, to establish, I would say, a deeper communion and relationship with environment. We understood that disrupting all these, I would say, archetypical norms or dogmas of architecture, we were finding hidden beauty in these materialities, where the concrete was expressive to the process that had casted its face. And it took us 10 years to assimilate what was the meaning of this little prototype until we arrived to Montana, to the other side of the world, in a completely different landscape, where the environmental conditions and the landscape was also inspiring, but that required also to forget about architecture and try to connect with that place through the expressiveness of matter and through its, I would say, original geological connection.
This was a project to build an art center in this vast landscape. And it was for us an opportunity to really continue with the research that started with the truffle and that somehow we left unfinished. It was another chance to work with the land, to create architecture that wouldn't overwhelm a landscape that we wanted to protect and that the client wanted to protect, and to create an architecture that would challenge some of the categories that would not really be seen as a building, that could be part of the land, that could be an art piece, that could be architecture with real architectural qualities. We were proposing to build a series of outdoor rooms where art could be hosted, concerts, music, And that by casting it in the ground, by reinforcing it, and then either lifting it, like the portals here, or unearthing it, like Domo, which is a bigger piece, it would retain some of the qualities of the land where it had been casted. Like in the truffle, there are many things that we control, of course, structure integrity, acoustics, thermal properties, but a lot others that are left, to the process to be decided. And in this case, also, it's a chance for us to create a building with this idea that continues this research that was not just for us, like the truffle, but that really could be exposed to the public and could have another type of impact.
So this path of the architecture of the earth, we have also explored it in different typologies. We use the artistic event, the prototype, like you do here in school, no? To test, to learn, and to develop certain technologies, and also to explore the uncertainties that come in that journey. This project that you're seeing here connects the artistic impulse of creating this informality as a structural stroke. We understood the beam as a line, and this stroke of structural matter as a beautiful way to create a bridge. In this case, we named it Petrified River. It was actually a commission for Cooper Hewitt Museum in an exhibition of a natural, but what we wanted was to develop a structural piece that contained all that tensions of the abrasion of the flow of a river. As you can see here, we casted it in our lab in Madrid, using all the engineering precision that requires any structural part, but also leaving a lot of space for uncertainties. And this contradiction between the need of engineering precision and expression freedom of matter is what still attracts us in our continuous work. As you can see, this piece had to travel from Pinto, Madrid. Pinto is the Silicon Valley of prefabrication, to Fifth Avenue, New York, and had to be connected and reassembled in a very, very harsh scenario, like a rainy night, cutting the flow of Fifth Avenue and rigging to the garden. So all that engineering challenge was to be capable to express the natural strokes of the form and the meaning of a dirty, earthy crust of concrete to represent the natural world, together with the capability of the off-siting industry to resolve all these informal pieces. So we use the prototype, and I encourage you as students, and I think you are in the best place to affirm this manifesto. The prototype is the real engineering and research document. Is where not only the artistic ideas and the engineering and construction solutions are tested, but also where everything becomes a true small package architecture.
And then we think it's very important that once you find something that you're really passionate about, that you take an excuse to try to develop it. In this case, for this exhibition, we had this idea, and we still have, to develop a bridge as a piece of landscape. And we use the exhibition to build a prototype at a smaller scale. No? So hopefully if you invite us back in 10 years, we will have built the actual bridge. Also with this previous project and with this other project, we are taking some of the ideas about the landscape and on-site construction that we developed with the truffle and with structures of landscape. And we combine it with also our experience and knowledge on prefabrication, trying to, in a way, construct and fabricate landscapes that then we can displace. In this case, this is a commission for a sculpture called Broken Wall, where we create a unit, we break it, and then we recompose it.
And in this reconstruction, we are somehow missing a lot of pieces, a lot of parts. And I think in this reassembly, where we are treating the concrete as masonry, as stone, in these irregularities, in these uncertainties, is where we give aspects of grace, no? In an aesthetical expression of grace into the structure. We broke in the model just by crushing the fragile concrete little slab, but we had to engineer how to break a large concrete slab. In this case, we tested mechanical actions like forklifting and forcing the concrete slab to break, or as we did in other example that I think is not in this video, we used explosive or expansive mortar to open and generate those cracks. This other project is a little piece of very conceptual architecture. It's a funerary monument, and we wanted to create these we call aurea stones, just by casting into a hole in the ground, no? Pure mass of concrete. But we let this mass concrete be contaminated by the ground that was somehow hostile. As you very well know, concrete is always exposed to its formwork, and whatever this formwork is based with, it will capture all that materiality. And conceptually, we wanted to explore this fabrication of a stone, unearth it, and by this, I would say, conceptual and very, very physical action of unearthing fabricated stone, start working sculpturally on it. Like in the broken wall, we had to apply very active forces into that stone to break it into parts. And we used all that fractures, all those pieces, again, as a reconstruction event. All these conceptual and very artistical prototypes inspire us into the fundamental basics of our practice that is based in this relationship of the structure and the earth that generated, or the source that generated the structure, being this either granite or a prefabricated stone or archetypical or typological structure part that could be a wall or anything. And we are always very, very inspired by all these forces and energies that apply to matter, let the material express and sometimes define the ultimate structural form that is going to be definitive.
In all these works, there's also a questioning of the idea of perfection, the idea of beauty that we, in our case, we really studied in school, no, the classical idea of symmetry and proportion and beauty. And we, with this line of research, we really perfection is very hard to get in architecture. It implies investing a lot of energy that sometimes doesn't really give the value in the end. So we explore a different idea of beauty, and or maybe we even enter categories of the ugly. And definitely we're not interested so much in perfection, but in developing techniques that allow the materials to express themselves. Some of them, like these ones, are more sculptural, but very conceptual and very important for us as we think about the larger projects. In this case, also using techniques of deconstruction, of demolition for construction, or techniques of explosion, like Anton was mentioning, we've used in some of the prototypes. So we really like to, when we design not just the projects themselves, but designing them through designing also the methods of construction that are very deeply or tightly connected to the concepts that we are trying to investigate.
Another message that I would like to share with you that has helped us is that matter or material in architecture is not something that you prescribe or you pick and use. It's something that you can create. And this creation of the material itself, or to be more precise, the materiality that comes from the usage of the material in a certain way, this is something that we understand is a fundamental part of architecture. So somehow we've also used all the contemporary tools that are so familiar to you to let the material speak, and from matter to data. This is a motto that we use. We extract all the geometries, expression, and all the data that is relevant for posteriorly engineer these parts. And as if it was a predestinated event in our lives, we crashed into Canterra. We didn't look for it. Actually, we always say Canterra found us. Canterra is a magical place that was a 19th century active mine, but that was, I think, started maybe in the Talaiotic period, thousands of years ago, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, because there's just neighboring the Talaiot of Kurniano that I'm sure was part of that area where stones were extracted. What we found here was a mine that required this, again, brutal action of cutting the first stone to let air and light somehow celebrate the birth of that space as an architecture space. And this hybrid that represents this space between what could be a building or a piece of landscape or just a human action over the earth really inspired us and put us into the mission of transforming all that space into an habitable space. In this case, landscape studio that we use, and I think some of you have been visiting.
This for us is also our laboratory, where we again learn how to live differently, because it's a space that we cannot control. It's a really big space with very thick earth walls. Would be mad to try to control the climate. And so we have to really understand how the earth moves, how light travels. And this space, in order to live in it, we have to inhabit it like nomads. We have to travel throughout the year and experience it differently. In the winter, the light enters into the depth of the mine, and there are different levels of humidity. It's totally off the grid, so we have to live with the energy that we harvest. And we also start to understand a different idea of comfort that I think it's so important today. It is also a project that it's ongoing, and that inspires us to build and to develop other projects like these dirt wall or earth skins that we are now working on in the Pinto factory, but that we somehow discovered by casting thin skins of resin into the stones of Canterra.
And here is where we are not attached to any material, no? And what we wanted was to, working with our hands and exploring these connections between architecture, art, and sculpture that we have always blurred, we wanted to somehow print or extract the prints of the stone in Canterra. And by doing this, we somehow developed the engineering with these canvases of carbon fiber together with resin and bioresins that we are still ongoing. But all this, its fundamental output is in an architecture space. We understand the architecture as this container, like in the old vision of architecture, of all these human artistic expressions that includes, of course, sculpture and painting. We understand the contemporary al fresco as a fundamental way to express through the walls of a building. Or in this project that we're sharing with you now, this is a museum of landscapes that starts being an active landscape that we practiced sculpturally by doing all these models that ultimately become informal, materially and geometrically shell. And this huge flower that we built sculpturally, and later on we 3D scanned and engineered coming from the cloud point, required to develop the invisible technology that allows the fabrication of this. In this case, for any concrete structure, we're talking about the mold.
Here again, we bring with us a lot of the things that we've explored with the structures of landscape, for instance, but we try to develop a structure that is much lighter and that can be casted on this mold that you see here, that we developed as an installation for the art and the landscape biennale in Versailles to show our client how this structure could be built. Because, I mean, you might have already experienced this in your life, but sometimes when you want to do something that is not very conventional, you find yourself with a lot of difficulties trying to convince contractors, clients that this is possible. So the prototype is really a tool to show others, first yourself, that what you're trying to propose can be made. So in this case, we wanted to build this mold to develop it ourselves. We used the installation in this exhibition. We had been invited to be able to fund it, and also to convince our client and the contractors. And we are actually right now in this process. Here you see how then the mold, after traveling to Versailles, coming back to our factory, it gets casted with a sprayed concrete and different layers of insulation, waterproofing, that will turn out to be the actual roof structure of this museum visitor center. And actually we had the team of the contractor and the client a few weeks ago come to the office from Korea to really see and have a workshop together in order to transfer all of this knowledge to the construction site.
As I would say, an artistic proposition, this project tries to let this heavy crust of earth fly. And it owes to its sinuous form the capacity to span 22 meters in waves that, even though they do not follow, I would say, canonical arches, but they are wrinkled and are able to engineer as such. And I think this is what today's software and data technology allows, this intimate connection between form and engineering. But when we arrive to this transfer into a material process, it's always something that has to be also designed and created. Here you see the relationship between that light skin of composite together with the GFRC sprayed concrete shell that was acting as the mold for all the reinforcing with a shotcrete, thicker, I would say, layer of concrete. And as we were defending during our presentation, this ultimately will end up in a building, the building as support and container of all these sculptural, architectural needs, and also artistic aspirations.
In the end, what we are really looking for is an experience of architecture in this building and in others that brings you closer to the context around you, that provides an atmosphere that inspires you, that connects also with the methods and with the materials that have been used for the making, but in the end that creates a space for life to be enjoyed. And this involves a lot of effort, and a lot of experimentation, research. In this case, you see how we are applying the earth skins that we were for the prototype that we were showing before, how that also becomes part of the space and of the experience of this building in Korea.
So my last, I would say my last words would be of optimism. I think architecture has still a long path to connect with the earth, and we're not talking only as an ecological mission. I think there's a cultural project that will alter completely our material palette, our processes, the form how architecture expresses itself, and even the disciplinary protocols that allow this. And in Ensamble Studio, we have been fundamentally investing our time in this relationship that we have named the architecture of the earth, but that has a very particular way to express this communion, this relationship. We use, and this was why we presented this lecture for you guys, after visiting today your labs and all the way that you practice the learnings of architecture, the optimistic message is that we do the same in our in our studio. We do the same with our collaborators, with our interns. So the message would be, do trust these protocols of interacting actively with the material world. Use the exercises that allow the fabrication of a part, to learn and to experiment, and believe that this connection between material and data is the fundamental source of architecture. Architecture is not an abstract discipline that is practiced in solely a poetical level. This has to certainly connect with the roles, the logic, the constraints, and the beauty of the material world. Thank you very much.
Anton, Deborah, thank you so much. I think it was worth the wait. I think everybody agrees. I'll be brief, and I think I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have never given an honorarium kind of like degree at IAAC, but I think these two guys embrace all the principles that we try to, kind of put forward here. As many of you guys know, one of our mantras is this idea of, learning by doing. We think that everything that we do here, from a tiny, model to a large prototype, is in a way prototyping the future. We are all the time, investigating on the possibilities of the material world. The part that I personally take away from this lecture is that sometimes when we are too much invested in the material practice, we forget also that one of the amazing outcomes is the creation of a space. And I think this is very evident throughout their work. It's not just the innovation on the material, or the use of the earth, or the use of particular resins, or the use of particular processes to transform those materials, but also, ultimately to generate, generate form, generate the spaces that are absolutely amazing and highly innovative. So I don't know how we will do it, but you have at the very least for now the honorary title of IAAC ambassadors of embracing pretty much all the principles. A little bit too much concrete. We are biased about that, but that's okay. All the rest highly compensates pretty much everything. So having said that, I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I do have questions, but I want to give definitely the mic to anybody in the room that has questions for Anton and Deborah. Marcia here in the first row has the first question.
Tonight, questions will be on stage. Please come here.
Thank you so much for your lecture. Very inspiring. I've been inspired by your work for a really long time, so it was so amazing to be able to see your thought processes. So I have a question that I think a lot of us have. And it's very interesting for me to understand a bit more about your process. I'm wondering how much of the ideation of your projects, how much the outcome is dependent on intuition and sort of reading the material and interacting with it physically, and how much of it is computational, maybe planning in advance, a lot of engineering, and maybe how those two are balancing out in your projects. So that is my question.
Well, I think it depends in the timing that you're referring to. If it's an absolute timing, I would say that the ideas come in an instant, in a spark. That's 100% intuition. It's a play, it's a game. We showed some of these moments. We call them sessions. We play. And we take some of these objects and we let them repose. We study them. And some of them become either the project or the detonator of the project. So that first part is 100% intuitive. Intuition, as you know, is not something that is, vaguely floating in your mind. No, intuition is the real, let's say, intellect that we all have. The only problem is that our intuition and our playfulness depends in how we exercise this. And this is something that can be learned, but sometimes you have to give away, get loose, be ready to play and do. And this is a very short part of the process. Then comes a long, hard work that is what becomes architecture.
For us, maybe you share this, some of you share the same feeling, but for us it's very stressful to, you get a brief, you start a project, you have X amount of time, you have to come up with the best ideas. No? We hate to work in this way. And also we have our own ideas, our own agenda. So for us, the ideal scenario is that we make, sometimes totally unrelated to the projects. We develop ideas and we have, I don't know if you saw some of the images of Canterra, where we have a lot of models. We have so many projects for the years to come, that we were showing you the bridge that is a piece of landscape, that we want to build it and we will find the brief, the client, whatever that will get us there. And that's, for us, that's the best scenario, because then you are, as Anton was saying, you're exercising, you are developing this idea, this creativity, also your ability to think with your hands and with your head at the same time. So then you are more attentive to finding the competitions, the commissions, the partners that align with the ideas that you have. And that's perfect. It's not always possible, but for us, that's the project of Montana, for instance, structures of landscape. It was a perfect commission for us to continue some of the research we had done before. So yes, and then, sometimes that moment of intuition is when we are making, but then of course, when we pick a project to develop, there's a whole process of engineering where we use the tools that we have to our advantage. 3D scans. Now we are, like you guys probably are, working with AI and having a lot of fun using AI to do all the work that we don't like to do, like renders. We hate to do renders. We hate to waste our time or spend our time representing things. So we do our models, and then we AI them to build all these beautiful images that, of course, will help clients to understand the
But this intuition is also supported by our total belief and how we honor the making of the model and the protos. Because the intuition as an early sketch is too abstract for us. So we need the intuitive part, And the playfulness, we let the matter speak, we break parts, we reduce. I mean, there's actions that we analyze that are intuitive, but they are very, very precise because they're driven by a material process. No? So, yeah, it's intuition, but it's intuition strongly connected by the trust that the material responsiveness will be according to a certain gravitas or actions or things that alterate the original consistency or form.
Any other questions? You have to come to the stage. That's the treat.
Thanks for the lecture. My name is Shuo Tongjiang from China, and yeah, we are doing just do the demolition with the materials now, and I'm thinking about like nowadays we are more and more like use computation, want everything to be exactly way, but I'm thinking your project's super powerful, but every time it's kind of by casual, it's like sometimes you don't know what will happen at the beginning yet. And that's sometimes it's like we want everything to be exactly way, going by exactly way, and maybe because of the architectural standard or code or something. But sometimes it's like to control our mind, maybe like, and I'm very curious about at the beginning of your groups, is that just happening in this way or some reason to let you get to think about, oh, we want to go with this way? Thank you.
So you are you are obsessed with control, no? You need to control. Well, me too. And all architects, we need to control our structures and our systems. I think there's a compatibility between precision and uncertainty. There are different aspects that you can put together. Uncertainties are fabulous resources for creativity and also to make our profession very exciting. I can confess that one of the greatest moments of, I would say, emotions associated to our practice are when we discover these uncertainties, because you have all kinds of feelings, from fear to shame to anguish to excitement to joy to pride, all this together, imagine, because you don't really know what is going to happen. It's like unpacking something that you have anticipated, but you haven't seen, and you don't have the certitude that it's going to work as you thought. But were conceived and engineered with total precision, believe me. When we did the domo, we casted a bed of earth with compacted gravel. It was in the video. We did all the form work. We pigmented manually. We had the rebar with absolute precision. I knew exactly every kilogram of the tension of that structure, where it was going. Except there's a margin, there's like a fluctuant vibration, a blurry area that is, by the way, what gives ultimately the expressiveness and the ultimate, let's say, wrinkle line that creates the edge of the cornice or the materiality. And altogether, what we had previously practiced in mock-ups, in models, in 3D recreations, everything, the process hid it until we carved out all that and architecture came, okay? Or the uncertainty when we dropped the stone in Canterra, or the uncertainty when we broke the wall in the broken wall. All those moments are very precise moments, but they serve a very creative energy that is based in this uncertainty.
Different notes on control. First of all, I would say architects, we have no control over the construction of the buildings most of the time. Like, I don't know a building that has been built as it was designed without any value engineering, without any changes, without any heavy negotiations with the contractor. It's really tough. And so you dream about something, and the more you are obsessed with everything coming out the way you've designed, the more you suffer. So I think this is really relinquishing control is something that we are still learning. And it is tough because you have to deal with many other agents that have different interests in the building and how it's going to come. For our projects, we use this control and lack of control in different ways. We use it in the creative process to allow more freedom. Sometimes when your head is trying to control everything, it's very hard to be surprised by what you're doing. No, that's why we like to work with our hands, because then you let the mind go a bit, and then you're able to do things that you were not thinking about. No, and these, we like it a lot because again, I think your hands, especially if you train them, are able to support your head in very productive ways. And for instance, in the project, when it comes to construction, the project of the truffle, or then the project in Montana, imagine architects from Madrid working in a very remote landscape in Montana with labor that we don't know how skilled they are going to doing this project that nobody has done before. I think it would have been much more difficult to do something super precise in terms of the finish than actually coming out with a process where, once the rules of the game were defined, how the earth was going to be carved, how the plastics were going to be laid out, and we were there helping, then the concrete was doing the rest of the job. No, and it is a structure that it probably is full of imperfections, but you don't really see them as such, no? And then maybe the only project where we are really achieving or trying to achieve control, because we also have this obsession for control, is a project that we haven't showed here that is very different from the ones we have showed, which is a startup we called WOHO, to build architecture as a product, where we are designing a construction system to fabricate affordable housing, low carbon. We're using some degree of CLT there, in case there's a question about that. And there we are defining everything, because we are spending years in designing every component, but then that has to be applied as a product. It doesn't allow for a lot of change after, no? And this is again something that a contractor is not maybe yet prepared to apply or to buy, but that is coming. I mean, that possibility for architecture is coming, and we are now working on it and getting ready for that.
And I'm going to answer your question and your question together. No, our first work, that was this cubic music school. We came directly from school with this idea of control, pure minimalistic lines, as we were educated in Madrid in that moment of time. And we arrived to Santiago de Compostela, and by a full act of intuition and a big, I would say, amount of ignorance and a little bit of courage, we told the quarry to put the stones in the inverse side, giving a lot of uncertainty of how that event of putting the stones a la contra, on the wrong side, as they say in Galicia, was going to express. And that was actually the most successful part of that project, that had somehow by code determined exactly the kind of stone and the quarry that had to create that to be compatible with the historical commission, blah, 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 blah. Okay? So sometimes control and lack of control together with intuition have to somehow defy the rules of the game. And the games that we play are very constrained. You know, they have very strict rules. No, creativity, by definition, is to break these rules. You have to know how to break them without being incarcerated or get into trouble. But the definition of advancing, of innovation, and of creativity is fundamentally get rid of control, break some rules, intuitively or scientifically, I don't care, or the combination of both, and understand what happens.
One last question. Eduardo.
Thank you very much. It was a beautiful lecture. We had the chance last year with some students to visit Cantera, and that was also unbelievable. I hope that also maybe every year we should have some visits to some of your work. Of course, I wanted to say that the way that you present the work, I think, is extremely poetic. The somehow bringing all of your projects within one narrative and to express it also with a film, together with the music, very much into a story that is not just chronological, which is about bringing, the ingredients of your project in a thesis, no, or in a story. I think was very, very nice to see. To me, I want to kind of extend this question of comfort, this question of chance, this question of control, a little bit to the inside of the space, no? Because I think your work is kind of meandering on the boundaries between what could be art, what could be architecture, and I was wondering a little bit how to frame the question or to frame the comment. And I was looking at the name of the founders of your studio, no, that has these two very nice words at the end, no, Abril and Mesa, which April is this month where climate, I think, has a lot of consequence on how we live. No, it's when we get out of the winter and when we go into the summer, and when suddenly we are much more outside. In at least in the Mediterranean and in Spain, we are very close to comfort, and it's a moment where the conditions from the outside can very much travel to the inside, no, which is something that we were discussing last year a lot in Cantera, no, and then the word mesa, which is the moment where in Cantera or in many other projects, the moment where you discover the space, you discover the outcome, and it's the moment where you have to inhabit it, no, and I think your projects have a lot of tables somehow, whether it's a coincidence or not, but it's one of the elements where it's one of the kind of first element you think of when you need to inhabit, no, besides the beds, the table, the kitchen, the chair, the kitchen, but this, so for me, like April, the time of the year, the climate, and then the table, the moment of inhabitation, all of this kind of together in this big narrative of understanding how to work with uncertainty and discovery, I think is something that is very beautiful and very, very particular to your work. So maybe you want to develop a little bit on this question of how to inhabit these spaces.
Yeah, thank you. That vocation of being an explorer, no? An adventurer, no? That in an intellectual game, when you are playing with models, has, an abstraction, but when you find a place, it's really, really amazing. No? So in Canterra, as you said, we didn't know where was inside or outside. And this is a very canonical definition of architecture that every period of time has very, very well redefined. Okay. If we go back to, I don't know, the Pompeian house, for example, this, you know, this definition of inside outside, it was based in a, I would say, spatial experience rather than a real indoor or outdoor condition. No, if we go all the way to the modernity and we go for the Farnsworth House or the classics, where this experience between being outside and inside is trying to be diluted, you know, within the boundaries of the parts that configure the space. No? But there's always, in architecture, there's always been kind of a fundamental, I would say, action in the definition of the space is what's inside and what's outside. What is part of the room, what is part of the outside landscape or urban, whatever the scenario is. No? In Canterra, this was totally undefined because that experience could not be defined by a limit. No? So that limit, it was, you know, how you inhabit those guts, those, you know, recesses, those wrinkles of the space, and how, going to the mesa, how there was certain objects, elements that somehow domesticated this space and turned it into something amicable, comfortable, hygienic, and therefore domestic. No, all this without being noticed, and all this without building. And this was the challenge, you know, and the beauty of doing this. Actually, it was not that difficult because we had to just leave and do some time. Something that was impossible to determine in a plan had to be determined by the time of being there, the time of experience, the time of the day or the night. No? So this was, and this is the fundamental learning of Canterra, that space still guides us. No? Unfortunately, coded contemporary architecture gives parametric definitions, dimensionally, bioclimatically, in terms of material compositions, of what space should be, and has, you know, I would say, denigrated a lot of the intermediate areas of experience that architecture or space gives. We were talking about the light. In contemporary architecture, is light or darkness. There's very in betweens, very few in betweens. No, in Canterra you have a full spectrum of in betweens, of penumbras, of areas that the light experience and therefore the spatial experience is very rich and very, very, very human. I could talk about Canterra without slides a couple of hours, because it has been, by this condition of not being designed, something that teaches a lot about architecture. This connects us with the uncertainties again. No? I'm sure that the miners that were structuring the stone didn't give a shit about architecture. And they created a beautiful contemporary structure that resonates with many of the values that we have today, of circularity, to being integrated in communion with nature, with very low energy or impact in terms of the actions towards the media, etc. No, there are many values that are very contemporary, and they were extracting and synthesizing just by learning from an invariant structure that, as I said, could have been there for centuries, no, in different forms. But I'm sure Deborah might tell you a different story, because as Canterra is about the experience, we all have a different experience about that space.
No, I will just add something about comfort, which I think it's really something we should be talking about very much as the last maybe centuries of architecture has been about really sealing architecture from the environment and creating its own independent ambient that has done a lot of harm to the environment and probably to people. No, now we are hearing constantly how good it is for the body to be exposed to extreme heat, to extreme cold, how by giving ourselves a very comfortable life, we are making ourselves really unhealthy because the stress is very good in its, in its good amount is very good for the body, no? And then we are building architectures that have all these layers, complicated, expensive, wasteful of things that provide a comfort that it's not even healthy for us, no? So I think reconnecting to nature in multiple ways. No, it's not just about adding green. It's really about light, ventilation, energy, how that works in the building. Of course, things that you guys are, really investigating here is fundamental. And then really talking about what comfort is, and are we able to be less comfortable, to maybe think about an architecture that is in greater degree of harmony with the environment, no? And it's even healthier for us, no? Maybe this is an important area of research for all of us.
I think there are more questions, but I propose we grab all a beer and you guys approach Anton and Deborah for the next 10 minutes and address that question. Is that okay? Okay. Come to the stage quickly. Maybe exactly the last two questions, we will combine them and have a joint response. Who else wanted to ask?
So we both study at MIB at Valdaura, and yeah, we literally try to do everything to not work with concrete. But we also try to convince people to work with natural materials. I think that is our mission. And now I see art that is only made from concrete and steel. To me, architecture and art and the artist should experiment with our world problems. At the moment, we are living in a big climate crisis, and I think now is the time for us, for you as well, to experiment with natural materials and how to reduce our carbon footprint. But I don't see anything back in that in your work. Why is that? And do you have plans of changing this? To experiment with natural materials.
It goes on the same way, I guess. Like we saw a lot of concrete and steel, which is something that we are always avoiding back in Valvera. Or like casting a project in Spain and then taken to across the ocean. So how it relates to the local things. I think. And another video that I was seeing, there's something that was in my mind, like the concrete being poured on top of real bars to have a curved shape. And it reminded me a lot of Brasilia, the Brazil's capital, when it was under construction, which is a city modernist from the 50s. And I was wondering how do we address architecture nowadays with climate changes and everything? So I kind of struggle to see the ideals that you said in relation to IAAC, because most of it was quite against from my point of view.
Shall I respond? Maybe it's more to me than to you, actually. No, I'll say a couple of things, and of course, I will pass the mic. When I say they embrace IAAC values, is very much on understanding architecture as a form of experimentation and try to really prevent this schizophrenia of them, many decades of thinking that you can solve the problems in a room in the other side of the corner, looking to a screen and try to, create the architecture in a completely alienated and isolated environment, right? I think these guys embrace very much this idea of experimenting in material, understanding the place, really have a deep connection with all the kind of material and technical elements that create architecture, but also being again space explorers in a way, trying to convert that not only on a material construction that you can claim that is X, CO2 absorbed and X, kilometers travel and things like that in the very quantitative side, but also that, at the end of the day, we are the ones that are giving shape to this planet, right? So in that regard, I think they embrace very much the values. It's true that, they have abused the use of concrete, but it's okay, like they are changing, which is the good news. I mean, like they hide on purpose all the recent work, which I would say is already half and half mass timber, half concrete. And they will end up being full mass timber guys very soon. I'm absolutely sure about that. So it's a process. No, it's a process. The built environment has a big inertia, and it's hard to steer the wheel in a different direction, and we're all getting there. Having said that, I have to say that despite the fact that we do huge efforts on the bio-based front, and I think it's very, very important, and again, I'm one of the first advocates, this is not a race against concrete. I mean, concrete has a very important role to play even in the bio-based material industry, as we know. We cannot do today good, solid foundations with the timber. It will be a disaster. Or many other things where concrete, we have to use it in a smart, intelligent way. And there are certain opportunities that, in those cases could make sense. So anyways, I wanted to clarify that because I think that deserves a response. Then over to you.
Well, mission accomplished. I know this was going to be a provocation, what is very good for our school. Danny and ourselves, we have been we have been battling this for the last 10 years, and Danny won. Okay. Temporarily, eh? Because I'm going to be mean. Now it's very easy to position truth in architecture. There's truth now in architecture. But you guys shouldn't believe in truth, because truth might change in the wave of time, okay? Or in the scale of the scope, or in the interest or the needs of our world. And we are all in the same boat, and we understand that decarbonizing is a technological challenge that we have to all face together, of course. As you all very well know, the technology of low carbon or even carbon zero concrete is it's available, it's there, it's not yet fully in the market because there's a lot of factories from Cemex, Holcim, blah, blah, that need to extend their life cycle at next 20 to 25 years. Do not forget that concrete is a natural material. And let me propose an exercise to these two dogmatic students. Build your own concrete. There's a lot of YouTube videos. It's fun to do it. Get some clay, like the one you were doing in Vedaura. Get some shells, go to the carbon calcinate, burn them, get the clinker, smash it, go to another part and rehydrate it. Okay? That's concrete. It's a natural mineral material. Unfortunately, marble or other variants of carbon calcinate do contain CO2 that when you burn it, it gets out. By the way, there's already the technology to capture all that, reinject it into the syrup, and making a more sustainable and resistant material that, by the way, could be a huge storage of a lot of captured carbon quotas that are here or there. Okay, so I want to defend the mineral origin of this material that has allowed us to build extraordinary structures in a very affordable way, because, by the way, we cannot consider Barcelona or Madrid, as the center of the world, even though we're close. But there's many aspects of many areas that they do not have timber or accessibility to it, or the climate that makes it, a sustainable material. No? So I think my ultimate ask would be, you as students have to be free and have to be open and have to be always hungry to learn and to develop new things, because maybe the solution to the construction industry is not either mass timber or concrete. It's something else that is not yet defined and could be in the world of the biocomposites. I'm just throwing that call out there, no? Where the ratio weight resistance and the biological harvesting capabilities is greater than the life cycle of a tree in a millimeter-based condition. No? So this is the attitude that you guys have to have, that has to be non-dogmatic, always open, and don't define the winner yet, because the game is starting to be played.
Yeah, and also something that we've extensively discussed with Daniel, and that you have to be aware of, is that there are multiple parameters that really decide whether a material is more fitting for a certain solution than other. And sometimes it's availability, but also there's durability. And we don't yet have the knowledge nor the tools to properly measure the impact of these materials. So we cannot just take a small window, no, of how much carbon footprint this material has in a specific moment of its life. Because for us, one of the good things that concrete has that timber does not have yet is durability for certain and strength for certain applications, no? And as Anton was saying, in Mexico City, for instance, you cannot build with timber even if you wanted to do, no? So we should not be very fundamentalist in this, but yes, be responsible, be open, be willing to understand these things that we yet don't fully understand. And also many things that we face today is culture. If you go to the north of Europe, the culture of timber, for instance, is much richer than in Spain. Today in Spain, many contractors, many clients, many users of the buildings do not understand or like or appreciate timber. And we are, in this startup I was mentioning, we are using timber alongside other materials, and it's being a battle to convince that timber can be exposed, can be the finish, and so that there are like different battles to be played here.
Sí. While you come, bien, es que el micro no llega. We are building now what I think is the first carbon zero residential building of affordable housing in Spain, and one of the few in Europe, certified by Living Future. As you know, the carbon equation is very complex, because it's not only the embodied part that obviously with timber you sequester a significant part of the carbon that, unless that timber is burned, is never unleashed back to the atmosphere. If it's burned, you've got a problem. But let's anticipate that buildings are not designed to be burned, okay? But this, together with the life of the building, that implies the usage of a lot of technologies altogether, because this is a question that is measured in this, let's say, a protocol in 25 years. So And the building that we build has concrete in foundations, has concrete in slabs that have been engineered to be 5 centimeters of Vertua 80% carbon-free cement. Okay, this implies economical actions to be taken or to be financed by someone. So the equation of the problem is very, very complex. We're totally invested in that. We created a company solely for that. And we love that the future is adding all these values that before were just poetical ones. Now there are code and technological ones, okay? And hopefully very, very soon a law that will help, push all this into, the industry, let's say, resistance and constraints. But I think the solution will come in a very, very efficient mix and combined efforts with the efficiency of all materials in its usage appropriate, okay? So as always, there's a beautiful middle equilibrium that will help to achieve these, let's say, environmental parametric goals.
Are you okay? Or maybe over drinks. You are the one that are gonna take the first beer and approach Anton and Deborah and do the last question while we wrap it up. So thank you all. Thank you, Anton and Deborah. Again, I consider these guys reference, family, friends, and pretty much everything. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. And thank you for sharing a very special part of your work that I think touches pretty much, what we are trying to do here. So thank you so much.